screen. I cannot see the chat, but feel free to cut the mic on if you can't see it. So my lesson today is called Job Coaching for Job Seekers. I'm offering tips, tricks, and advice from a recruiter. I've also been a hiring manager my entire career. So hoping today's information will be insightful for you. So my name is Josh. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. It is currently cold and we're counting down the days until spring. I have degrees in culinary arts and hospitality management. So right out of college, I have been managing, have 14 plus years in professional leadership experience. So that being said, I've interviewed thousands of resumes or people reviewed thousands of resumes, both people and resumes, right? And really not only from an agency side as a recruiter, but also from a corporate side. So I'm hoping to offer you kind of both sides of knowledge. I have a passion for helping others succeed. Both of my parents are in the public service sector. So it's kind of in my blood. And a little random fact about me is my favorite food is popcorn. So today's agenda, we'll go over my goal for today. We're going to go over some resume do's and don'ts, your LinkedIn optimization, job search strategy. And then I do ask that you leave any questions until the end and put them in the chat so we can review them. So my goal today is to make you confident in the professional representation of yourself so you can focus on your job search, right? I have been in your shoes. I feel your pain. I know how stressful and difficult it is searching for a job. So I'm here to hopefully ease those, frustrations and stresses so that way you can focus on your job search. And I do ask that if you have any questions, please ask them through the chat and I'll answer them towards the end if time allows. And in effort to save time, please refrain from asking any questions specific to you. Rather, keep them vague in general so everyone else can understand. And if you do have any questions specific to you, we can go over those at the end of the presentation. Sorry, we can go over those on one-on-one, hopefully one-on-one coaching if you decide to go with that at the end. One of the things I cannot stress enough is having a LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have one, I really highly recommend you make one. That being said, I have been a recruiter, so happy team members that are happy at their jobs right now are not applying for jobs, right? There's always a better opportunity out there. And unless you have a LinkedIn profile, you're kind of non-existent or invisible to recruiters or hiring managers. Because you're not applying for jobs, right? So we don't have your resume. We can't see you on LinkedIn. So I always recommend having LinkedIn. And throughout this whole presentation, I will kind of refer to us as having LinkedIn profiles. And I do offer LinkedIn building and optimization services, which we'll touch on at the end if you don't have a LinkedIn profile. So just always remember, you're selling yourself professionally. So you are the actor or actress on a professional stage. Your resume and LinkedIn are a direct representation of you and your work ethic, right? So they should be the most flawless and perfect document you have on your computer and then your LinkedIn profile online, right? So if there are a ton of inconsistencies in your professional representation, meaning your resume or your LinkedIn, then if I am trying to, if you're a prospect I'm trying to hire and there's all these inconsistencies, on your profile, then I am just going to assume that if I were to hire you, I'm going to expect those same results out of any document that you're providing or that I ask of you, okay, as your manager. So just always remember that. So the first section of your resume should be your personal information and an engaging opening statement. Okay, so we're going to break this all down, crash course here. So you want to start with your name. You only want to put the name on your resume or your LinkedIn that you prefer to be called. So if my full name is Jonathan Michael Doe, but I prefer to be called Mike Doe, I'm not going to put John Doe. I'm not going to put Michael Doe. I'm going to put Mike Doe. And that needs to be consistent from my resume to my LinkedIn so I'm able to search you on LinkedIn, right? If I were to like your resume. Your phone number, you always want to include your cell phone number. on your resume, not a landline, not a work phone, okay? What's super important, these questions ask yourself, do you answer calls from unknown numbers, right? Does your phone automatically reject unrecognized numbers? Voicemail, is your voicemail set up? I can't tell you the amount of candidates that I've called where their voicemail wasn't set up, okay? Is your voicemail greeting professional? That's super important, all right? Like, remember, this is you representing yourself professionally. You're trying to land a job. So if you have a silly voicemail, it's not going to look good, you know, on your character or your representation of yourself. Do you check your voicemail? That's super important. Is it full? So can I even leave a voicemail as someone who's trying to hire you? These are all things that you want to consider. Your email address. You always want to include your personal email address, not a work email address, right? It should be a professional and appropriate email address, just like your answering machine prompt, right? So I don't want to see any inappropriate things. You can always, nowadays, you can have 5, 6 email addresses if you want. So you always want to ensure that it's appropriate because you're applying with it. Do you check your email? Are notifications on? Like these all seem like very obvious things, but you'd be surprised at the amount of candidates that everyone tries to reach out to, hiring managers or recruiters, that these aren't, you know, happening. So things to keep in mind. Education. Always include any degrees you have and establishments you've received them from. Now, a lot of people like to put them at the top of the resume or the bottom. Regardless, the same content should be in there. I always recommend excluding your graduating year but only include it if you've recently graduated, because then I know as a hiring manager that you're eager, you're trying to get out there into you know, your industry and have this experience. You're very eager. Otherwise, it's just showing your age, which I know, at least in the United States, and I'm sure around the world, it's illegal to consider or even, you know, not hire someone against their age or anything like that, or discriminate. That's the word I was looking for. But it happens. There's algorithms that read your resumes and stuff like that. So I just always recommend to exclude those things. And your high school, never include that unless it's like a technical high school that you went to where you've learned skills that you now practice, or it's in the industry that you're in now. I would include that if that's the case. Location. So do not include your home address, right? This is a personal document, but it's professional. It's not about where you live, right? There's crazy people out there and stuff like that we don't want them to see all your personal information. So only include your city and your state. If you're remote, include that. If you're open to relocating, include that, but be specific with it. So if I put open to relocation on my resume, that means I'm really open to relocating anywhere, right? Or if I'm relocating to a specific demographic or geographic area, then I'm going to put relocating to that area. So that way it makes sense to why I'm applying to jobs in that area. A couple examples: currently Chicago-based, relocating and seeking opportunities in Boston. Or you can put hybrid in Miami, Florida, okay? Both your resume and LinkedIn should start with a strong introduction or opening statement that touches on your experience, qualifications, as well as your career goals and what you're looking for. So this is literally what's on my resume. As a seasoned executive recruiter with a distinguished career in luxury hospitality, I bring a deep understanding of talent acquisition and relationship management. My expertise lies in identifying and securing top-tier talent while fostering enduring relationships with clients, candidates, and team members alike. My career has been dedicated to enhancing guest experiences and team dynamics through strategic practices, ensuring alignment between client needs and candidate capabilities. I am now seeking to leverage my extensive experience and proving success in an executive recruiter role, where I can apply my skills to drive talent solutions and build strong, lasting connections within a new organization. And one thing I'm going to stress on is using your resources, which we'll touch on later, but there's so many resources we have in front of us right now that I'm just going to tell you and be honest that whole thing was written with ChatGPT, right? So use the resources we have. I can plug in my resume to ChatGPT and ask it to make, you know, an eye-opening statement to my resume that catches any hiring manager of any job that I'm applying for, right? Use your resources when they're available. So the next section of our resume is going to be our professional experience, okay? So you always want your resume to be honest and accurate. Honesty is the best policy. It's a super small world. I can't tell you how many times that I, as a recruiter, have read resumes for previous managers I've had that have applied for jobs that I'm now posting online, or you just never know who you have worked with in the past or may work with in the future that you're going to come across. So if you lie about your previous experience, that's going to catch up to you. Always be honest, okay? And I just want to reiterate, so many people think that your LinkedIn profile is this grand thing and nobody wants to be on LinkedIn, but it's literally just a virtual version of your resume, right? And so not only should it be equally as perfect, but you can just plug the information that's on your resume right into your LinkedIn and kind of just work on networking and applying from jobs from there. And one thing I always want to stress is that any of your current position that you have on your resume or your LinkedIn, any of your experience or your responsibilities should be listed in present tense. And then anything beyond that, previous experience, should be listed in past tense, okay? These are the attention to details and little things that we always kind of look at as hiring managers or recruiters. Consistency is key. Consistency is super important. Not just the actual information that's in both your resume and your LinkedIn, but little things like fonts, bullet points, formatting, your sizing, indentations, your grammar. Am I spelling all my my numbers out, or am I writing them? Am I putting 5K versus 5,000? Am I putting and versus the ampersand? So those are all things that you need to be consistent throughout the whole your whole resume. And same with punctuation. And as I mentioned earlier, inconsistencies show a lack of attention to detail, awareness, and care. So if I'm going to hire someone on board that has all these inconsistencies, I can pretty much expect that attention to detail on any assignment that I give them. Okay, so we want to eradicate all of that. We want your resume and your LinkedIn to be perfect. Your resume should also be concise yet detailed. We don't want it any more than 2 pages. We want to delete irrelevant experience to save space. So like I mentioned, I'm in the hospitality industry, so a lot of my examples are going to be from that. So if I am right now trying to get a job in information technology, I'm not going to include all of my previous experience as a server or a host or a busser, right? Because those are 2 different industries and they don't matter. However, right now, if I'm trying to get a job within the hospitality industry, I may show or should show my previous relevant experience, but I'm not going to want to show all the information below each position because it's just going to take up space on my resume. So instead, I would write them as follows: previous relevant experience, show my position, show the company, and then show the years that I worked there. Okay, so we're going to review a couple examples right now of some resumes. So these are actual resumes that I've received. Okay, so when looking at this, of course, I've taken out their actual information, but a lot of people think that they can pay someone just to make their resume look nice, right? But if you can see in this resume, I opened it on my computer and all the formatting is wrong. They have this gridding in here, so that throws off their whole resume, okay? Right? This whole left side of their resume is just taking up space down the whole entire resume. So it can all be, instead of it all being drawn out into the whole page, it's kind of in this little section here. So we want to make sure that the formatting is consistent across the entire resume. I also don't think it's necessary to have the address, okay? This is just an example of, see all this spacing here? This resume is like 4 pages when it could be 2, okay? So that's one example. And this is another example of kind of formatting. So this person tried to have their resume pink and stuff like that, which as a hiring manager and as a recruiter, I don't care how your resume looks. I just care about the information that's in it, right? What is your grand experience? What are you capable of? Why should I hire you? Those are all things that I want to see in here. So with this resume, there's certain things like, I know that they manage 30 staff members. So that is a great telltale on how many people they're able to manage. They can oversee over 100 children, right? It's like, so metrics are super important, which we'll touch on. But I just recommend you have a normal Word document or Pages document and have the information in there instead of trying to make your resume look good, because then all these formatting things kind of ruin the presence and of your resume. Okay. All right. So in your resume, we want to remove the obvious. Okay. So your resume should showcase what you're capable of, the grand extent of your knowledge, any awards that you've received. It should not solely focus on your duties and responsibilities. I can't tell you how many resumes I've looked at where it just says what their job is and what they do every day. Okay. I don't need to know what you do every day, because if I'm hiring someone like you, I already know what the responsibilities of this person are. I want to know what you've accomplished at your job, why I should hire you against every other applicant who has had the same title. Okay. So be confident in yourself, kind of show everything you're capable of, and just always remember you are selling yourself, right? So here's an example of removing the obvious. So there's an automotive repair technician that works for Ford Motor Company based in Boston from 2012 to present. We know you work on cars, right? We know you perform oil changes. That's just the basic necessary responsibilities of your job. What I want to know is things like this. I inspect, maintain, and repair all Ford Motor Company branded cars. I have the ability to diagnose over 2,000 potential repair points, right? I can upsell products and services to customers, resulting in a $5,000 in monthly sales increase. These are things I want to see, not, what you do every day, because that's obvious, right? If I'm hiring an automotive repair technician, I know what you do every day. I want to know kind of what you're capable of, what you're going to bring to my team, and why I should hire you, essentially. We also want to use keywords and metrics, okay? This is what I was touching on. So include keywords, awards, metrics, accomplishments for each position you've held, right? This is actually from my resume. So I was a director of guest services with Company A in Chicago, 2020 to 2024. Manager of the year, 2020. I directed a team of 100 team members, including 5 salaried leaders. So that's showing I can manage hourly team members, and then I also can manage a whole team of other salaried leaders who manage those people. Exceeded my sales goals of 1.2 million by 35%. Sorry, this is not from my resume. I made these up. An example later is. I implemented an employee recognition program that increased employee productivity and overall staff retention. That's super important, right? That means that I'm keeping my staff engaged. I created new systems to streamline guest satisfaction surveys to ensure maximum participation, oversaw the daily operation of a 4.5 million annual account. That shows how grand my experience is, that I can manage $4.5 million in account sales. Manage 10 plus clients per month, increasing their profitability by 10%, right? This is just all showing what I'm capable of. Received an award for Manager of the Year after 6 months of employment. All super important. That means that I was liked by my team, and that my leadership was aware of that. Like I said, don't forget to use past and present tense, but these are all things that you can start your descriptions off under your responsibilities. You managed, you trained, created, implemented, encouraged, oversaw, accomplished, demonstrated, updated, revamped, and so on, right? So these are all helpful keywords that you can use in your resume. And I always want to, reiterate that when it comes to keywords, you should always be reading the job description of the job you're applying for and put some of those keywords and responsibilities or make sure that your experience relates to those in your resume. So you're either putting them in your resume, obviously being honest, or you're making sure your experience highlights those things and showcases them. So I'm actually going to show you an example of my resume. So my resume is smaller font, just straight up to the point, okay? I'll try to zoom in here. So you can see my name, my phone number, my email. You can also include your LinkedIn there if you'd like. I recommend if you're including your LinkedIn, you can hyperlink something instead of pasting the whole link in there. Control K usually does that on most computers, so I can just type the link in. I can put LinkedIn instead of putting my actual link to my LinkedIn, okay, which just takes up space and is usually just random letters and numbers. So I have my opening here. I have each of the jobs I've worked at, and it's really just, you can see the metrics in here. It's short, sweet, and to the point. It doesn't look like this grand resume because I'm trying to showcase myself, right? In my experience, and not have it look good and paint this facade on my resume. Okay. All right. So let's get back to here. So this is, like I said, this is actually from my resume. So I was a director of guest services, director of talent for Company A in Chicago from these years. I always recommend removing the months from your experience and only having the years. The reason I recommend that is because there's algorithms that are reviewing your resumes nowadays that will automatically reject you if there's a gap in your experience, which we don't want that. So you may have gone through a layoff or, a medical leave or whatever like that. So I always recommend, which we'll touch on later, including that and being honest, but removing the months out of your resume will just kind of prevent hiring managers from nitpicking and be like, oh, well, you left company A in 2021. Why did you take a year off and start in 2022, right? So I'll show you ways to include that. But here we're just talking about metrics, which is important to include on your resume. So here I have bolded, I manage 300 team members across 4 brands. And like I said, this is true from my resume. I manage flawless execution of events ranging from 10 to 1,000 people. So that's showing my grand experience. Developed a web-based training program for current and future team members. Super important. I put in here the programs that I've used: Microsoft PowerPoint, Google Sites. What else here? Oversaw recruiting and hiring efforts for all front of house and back of house field staff, over 300 people. Sole person in charge of scheduling for all full service events ranging from 10 to 2,500 guests, right? So this is just showing, instead of me saying what I do every day, this is kind of showing what I'm capable of and what I can bring to your team. I can revamp training programs. I know accounting, administrative, human resources, all these things, okay? Another important thing that people look over when saving your resume, always make sure to rename it. I can't tell you how many resumes of people that I've applied or that have applied for jobs I'm trying to look at or review that I open their resume and it's literally named like A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, like all these things. And then I open it and I love it. And then I don't know how to find it on my computer. And yeah, I can go back into these programs and find them, but your job is to kind of make things as easy as it is for recruiters or hiring managers that are reading your resume. So if my name is John Doe, I would either name my resume J Doe Resume 2025, John D Resume 2025, John Doe Resume 2025, right? So I'm updating it. This shows the year that I'm updating it every year. My experience is accurate and updated. And as I mentioned, hiring managers review countless applications per day. So your goal is to make it as effortless and as possible on their end, because it's just as stressful as it is applying for jobs, it is, receiving those on our end. So you want to make it as easy as possible for us, because we obviously loved your experience, loved your resume, but if it's hard for us to find it, that's a little stressful. So hold on, I meant to go back. Oh no, here we go. Okay. Always tailor your resume to the industry and position you are applying for. So I come from the hospitality industry. my experience is in hospitality, but there's also some transferable skills that I have in customer service, right? So I'm going to have a resume tailored to my hospitality experience, but at the same time, I'm going to have another resume that tailors to any customer service experience for any jobs that I may be applying for in the customer service industry. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, you can plug your resume into ChatGPT and say, please tailor it to, the customer service industry. I always recommend, if you're doing that, to obviously review everything before you apply to make sure it's all accurate. But all I'm saying is there are resources out there, just like Leland and stuff like that, where you can use to leverage your time, if you will. Always proofread your resume before submitting it. I would always recommend sending it to someone you trust. So not only can they provide you accurate, honest, and constructive feedback, but also you can see how your document opens on their computer, because if it's all whack and out of place, then you're going to need to figure out how to fix that. Okay. We're almost into the job search, which I know a lot of you were here for. So one thing I do want to touch on is what we call job hoppers. So if you have been at any job for less than 2 years, or what we call short stints or a job hopper, always include that with, include your reason for leaving in the details under each position, to remove the opportunity of assumptions you left your job, right, because you're bored or fired or whatever. So an example is, as an automotive repair technician with Ford Motor Company in Boston, I was laid off. See, I put the year to 2020. I was laid off due to COVID-19. So that will explain any gap in my resume. Or, sorry, I meant for a shorter stint. So I probably should have put like 2019 here. But also, if you're a seasonal worker, or you left due to a promotion, or your department was eliminated, you always want to include those things on your resume. Also, as I mentioned, if you have a seasonal, an internship, a temporary position, a consultancy structure, or a 1099, always include those things, because otherwise it looks like you worked somewhere for 6 months and then you left, right? So just be honest. Honesty is the best policy. Include why you left: due to COVID, seasonal position, or an internship, which will automatically explain the short stint. Okay. Here we go. I know a lot of you are here for this. So mastering your job search. So helpful guidelines for your job search. Job hunting is literally a full-time job in and of itself, and we all understand that. So I always recommend to set aside a specified amount of time per day or per week that you're going to look into your, dive deep into your job search and just focus on it. Okay. Apply to as many opportunities that you qualify for, and only the ones you see yourself working in. I can't tell you how many executive chef jobs I posted where someone who has 0 cooking experience or someone who's a home cook has applied for, right? So take the time to read the job description, make sure your qualifications match the job description. Don't just apply to any job because you're desperate, because that'll, show through your interview process. Always leverage free resources. So there are so many free resources out there for every step of the job search and application process, not only Leland, but you can apply through LinkedIn. There's so many, obviously, company websites you can apply for, but these are also some free websites that you can post your resume on for employers or recruiters to see. Okay, so keep that in mind. When you're applying for a job, you're not just putting one alert out there or using one resource. You need a job. Some of us may be desperate, so we're using all the resources we have available, especially the free ones. So after you've applied for a job, okay, do as much research on the company and opportunity as you can to prepare for a potential job interview. Also continue to apply for other job opportunities. Many of us have focused on one job, and we may have had a 3rd or 4th interview that, even me, this has happened to me, that didn't go through, and we thought it was the one. So you don't want to let yourself down. You want to apply for as many jobs that you qualify for as possible. Okay. And then I cannot stress enough spending your time on LinkedIn. Okay. So I'm going to show you following this slide a live example on what to do. But after you apply for a job, regardless of if it's on LinkedIn or Indeed or ZipRecruiter or whatever resource, the first thing you want to do is search for the company that posts the job you applied for. This is on LinkedIn. Okay. You go to LinkedIn, you search for the company that posted the job you applied for. You follow the company. And then under their company profile, you go to the people section and add anyone that is in HR or hiring within the company. So I'm just going to show you this live here. So, okay. So here we have, this is the job function on LinkedIn, right? So this are the different jobs LinkedIn offers. You can type in the job you're looking for and then you hit search. So that's all I did here before we got on. So as you can see here are all the jobs that are under the recruiter title in the United States that show up that are hiring right now. Pay attention to all these filters. Okay, so I clicked remote because I'm looking for a remote job. So that eliminates over 3,000 jobs, right? So I'm going to hit show results. I always recommend, if you want to see the most recent jobs, you can go into here and look at when the date was posted. I'm going to put past 24 hours, right? Because I want to know about recent jobs that have been posted. If you're an entry level or an executive, you can weed out some jobs by choosing these. Also, if you need to have a certain salary threshold, you can do the same here. Other filters I want to recommend that are on here are if you're looking for full-time contract, part-time, temporary. Easy apply just means I can hit a button and apply for the job, which we'll touch on in a minute. One thing I always want to look at is under 10 applicants. So that means that under 10 people have applied for the job. So I would personally toggle that on and show those results. So that way I know there's less than 10 people that have applied and I have a better opportunity rather than all the saturated jobs that you're seeing on here. Okay. So let's say I applied for the job on LinkedIn or any resource. What I'm going to do, like I said, is come on LinkedIn. All right. Sorry. Let me back up. If I applied to the job from LinkedIn, you can see here, you can click on all these different jobs. It says about the job. I'm trying to find one here that, okay. So let's say here, contract recruiter, Crunchyroll added this job, right? However, under this driver recruiter, KKG Recruiting, I can see that literally Jamie Newton was the hiring person who posted this job. So what I'm going to do if I applied for this job is I'm going to go to Jamie Newton's LinkedIn and I'm going to add her. I'm going to hit connect. And you see here what it says add a note. I'm going to say, hi, Miss Newton. My name is Josh. I recently applied for your driving recruiter position. I'm so interested, so eager. Here's my qualifications. Here's why I'm interested in working at KKG Recruiting. Here's my resume, right? So automatically what you're doing is you are standing out from every other person who just hit apply on that job and just put their information in and went to go apply for another job, right? So hopefully Miss Jamie Newton is going to see my name twice now and she's going to be like, wow, Josh is super interested. He's eager. He reached out to me. You know, I can really tell that he's interested. So I'm going to review his resume right now and hopefully the qualifications match so I can immediately ask him for an interview. Okay. Now let's say that you're unable, like this role, to see who the hiring manager is. Then what I would do is I would go to this company, right? Because I know who's posting the role, Crunchyroll. And I'm going to go to people. So this tells you that there's 1,990 people who work for Crunchyroll based on them saying that I work here on LinkedIn. So I might type in HR, okay? And now I can see that there's 51 people who work in human resources at Crunchyroll. So after I've applied for the role, let's say I was applying for an HR technology recruiter, I would add this guy. Let's say I was applying for an HR position that's in people operations, I would add this gentleman. Or let's say I work in operations, I might just type in operations and see who pops up. And then I would add those people, right? Not everybody, but you want to see who really is overseeing the department that you are trying to apply for, okay? So like I said, you want to take this step so that way you're already kind of, after you've applied for a job, already standing out from the other applicants. But this can be applied for, let's say you're applying on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or what have you. You know the company name. So I know I just applied for Crunchyroll on Indeed. So I'm going to type in Crunchyroll right here and do the same thing. I'm going to follow the company. I'm going to go here. I'm going to look at potentially the different jobs that they have that they're hiring for. I'm also going to look at the people that work there and do the same search strategy. But it tells you, this is their profile page. So it tells you a little bit about the company, tells you their website and stuff like that. So I want to dive deep, not only on their website, but also into LinkedIn. You can see everyone who's associated them that works with the company, which is a great resource to end. Like, this is why I cannot stress being on LinkedIn enough, right? Okay. And we mentioned you're gonna, sorry, let me share my screen here. If you're able to message them or you can add them, you know, you're gonna let them know that you applied for this certain role with their company, how interested you are, highlight your previous experience and qualifications, attach your resume and thank them and include you appreciate their time and consideration and look forward to hearing from them, okay? Also, you want to set job alerts on LinkedIn, right? I mentioned earlier that your experience may be applicable or transferable to many different sectors or different industries. So you want to set job alerts on LinkedIn for every single one of those opportunities you're open to working, okay? Follow every company you aspire to work at and their competitors. Network with anyone and everyone, especially professionals within your industry, employees of companies that you like to work at, and so on. You can never have enough followers on LinkedIn, and it just expands your network visibility and potential for opportunities. So going back to LinkedIn, let's say I go to, so these are just people that I recently connected with. So let's say I just go to this random person. So you can see here that it says first, right? So that means that I am directly connected with this person, okay? So that means that I have access to everyone they're connected with, like their friends, if you will, on LinkedIn, their professional network, okay? But you can see here, this random person, she's actually from Bon Appetit Online. So you see here, it says third. That means that I'm not connected with anyone she's connected with. So we have no equal or common connections. So I can't see anything she posts or any content or job opportunities or anything like that. But if I were to follow her, then I could see all that. So I'm just telling you all this is because you can never follow enough people on LinkedIn. And I'm a recruiter as well, obviously. So I've actually landed clients that saw me in this more profiles for you, right? So we mentioned the first connection and the third, but this second connection means that I'm connected with someone in my network that Arya is connected with that knows, or sorry, that Arya is connected with. So they're a second connection, if you will. So long story short, I would just go on LinkedIn, add everyone that you and that has any position you aspire to hold or previously held, right? Any company you want to work at, any of their competitors, any colleges that are associated with degrees that you have or industries that you are looking to be in. You can never do enough networking on LinkedIn, and I cannot stress enough the importance of that, okay? Almost done here. Or we are pretty much done. Okay, so my services on LinkedIn, I offer job coaching, job search consulting, where I help job seekers be confident and successful in their job search by optimizing their LinkedIn profile, their resume, and offering insider insight. These are just some of the services that I do touch on: resume writing and or optimization, LinkedIn profile writing and or optimization, job search strategy, interview prep and etiquette, which is a huge thing, contract negotiation, professional representation, and more. If you're looking to dive deeper into your resume, LinkedIn, or job search strategy, I'd love to help you. I am also currently extending a 25% discount on all my coaching packages for anyone who has attended today. Hoping if you found today's information helpful and insightful, that you can leave a 5-star review on Leland. Here is a QR code if you want to be directed directly to my packages on the Leland platform. And I'm going to go ahead and answer any questions that anyone has put in the chat at the moment. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so we can look at those. Okay. All right, here. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Okay. How many years until you remove your year after 5? Catherine asked that. I'm not sure what you're specifically asking, into what years. So if you can just touch on that. What about education that I didn't finish? Do you include it? So yes, include any education that you do have. What I would not include is when you graduated. Your education is super important, but I don't need to know that I just graduated with my master's in 2022 or what have you. It's just important that you have the credentials, right? If I'm a job that you're applying for that requires those credentials, okay? So only include the degrees that you have, not necessarily the year that you graduated. Let me take a sip of water too. Okay, next question. I was told that opening statements and summaries on resumes are subjective and rather use the opportunity on a cover letter or when those job applications have an additional information text box. What is your opinion? I always recommend including, an opening statement, because I don't know how insightful you found my opening statement, but it touches on your experience briefly, but also shows you what you're looking for. So it touched on my experience and that I was looking for an executive recruiter role with, an expanding company or in hospitality. I always recommend including those things instead of just putting your resume, because if you just highlight, your experience, if you just highlight your experience, how am I to know what you're looking for? You could be a line cook all your experience, but now you're looking for a management role. And if you don't include, I'm looking for a management role, I would never know that. So I always recommend including that information on a resume. The next question is, what makes a candidate application in general resume stand out to you? Are there specific experiences or achievements that particularly impress the hiring team, specifically when applying for a consultant role? Consultancy is a little different, right? So always include that it was a consultant role, so that way it shows your short stint everywhere. But like I said, what did you accomplish as a consultant when I hired you? Did you increase my sales? Did you increase productivity? Did you increase customer engagement? Did you increase staff retention? What processes did you put in place that you could potentially do to my company if I'm hiring you, right? So these are super important things that you want to include on there. Achievements, metrics, like numbers, super important when you're applying for any job that you want in your resume. But especially as a consultant, if I'm going to hire you as a consultant, right? Consultants are usually, I'm hiring you as a business that needs your expertise. So what expertise can you provide me? How can you increase my sales? What did you do for your previous customers and stuff like that? That will show. Next question, can you clarify honesty? Like, obviously don't flat out lie, but when companies have all these different names for the same job description across the board, what method do you recommend when it comes to titles versus description? So this is very common in the hospitality industry. Titles like general manager is a very loose term. So like I put in my resume, I want to know, same thing I just talked about, metrics, like what are you capable of? Titles are transferable. So what did you do as as a general manager or as a consultant that you can bring to the table. Remove the obvious. So if I'm hiring a restaurant manager, I already know the duties of a restaurant manager. Okay, so what can you bring to me as a company that's not obvious? I don't need to know what a restaurant manager does. I want to know what you are capable of as an individual that you can provide me to my company, right? What's the benefit of that? It says recruiters take an average 6 seconds to look at resume, at least that was expressed over to me, which is true. So yeah, that's recruiters take 6 seconds to look at your resume, and algorithms take even less. So I recommend look at the job description of the role you're applying for, so that way you can integrate those responsibilities into your resume as well, or showcase, hey, I did these things on my resume, here's what I did. Okay. Any tips on reaching out to recruiters and hiring managers via LinkedIn for a job you're interested? I think we did cover that. Should you change the wording of your resume each time you apply to a job? Yes. So I always recommend, like I said, having different resumes for each job you're applying for. So those keywords and your experience should match those different jobs that you're applying for. So I don't think you need it. If you're for an example, if you're applying for a general manager of a restaurant and a restaurant manager of a restaurant, those are two different jobs, but kind of encompass the same responsibilities. But if I'm applying for a call center manager, I'm going to totally tailor my resume in a completely different way to highlight the same experience. We're not lying, the same experience that matches those job qualifications and requirements. Ideal length, no more than 2 pages. I think you saw my resume. If not, I can share my screen again here. But here, let's do it. So this is my resume. This is my literal resume. It has all the details in it. It's font 11, or it's super small, but it's concise. It doesn't look pretty. It has the information that you need in there. And this is what recruiters and hiring managers want. They don't need a resume to look pretty. They don't need, foo-fooing of the resume. I just want to know what you're capable of, why I should hire you, what your experience brings to my company, right? So that's what I want to know. What is the most important part of the resume to draw attention? Just the contents of it, right? So like I said, it doesn't need to look pretty. I don't need to know the job responsibilities of your everyday, or the responsibilities of your everyday job. I want to know what you've accomplished, what you're capable of accomplishing, how many people you've managed, sales numbers you've hit, just kind of like show me the top notch of what you're capable of achieving. And that's what's going to draw me into looking at your resume or hiring you. Okay. Do you change the resume for every job? I think we touched on that already. Not necessarily every job if it's within the same industry, but if you have different jobs you're applying for within different industries, I would definitely recommend changing that. Thoughts on cover letters? That's a touchy subject. I don't think it's necessary, but there's other recruiters that will tell you otherwise. I think your LinkedIn and your resume should really just touch on all that. That's going to be in your cover letter. Do you really need a personal summary in front of if you are a recent grad with little full-time work? Yes, I would definitely recommend, if you are a recent grad with little, professional experience, to include that. I'm eager to get out in the job force. I'm eager to learn more. Here's what little experience I have right now. Here's why I would be a great fit for your company. I'm dedicated, I'm young, I'm eager. All those things are super important to include. You mentioned gaps, seasonal work. Wouldn't that come up in the interview? Yes, it would come up in the interview, but if there are gaps in your resume, sometimes you might be automatically rejected, right? So if you're being upfront with those things, yes, I might ask you about them in your interview, but if I know you were already laid off due to COVID, I'm not going to ask you those things. But if there is a gap that you haven't been honest with, then I might ask you about those things, right? So you just want to be upfront with that. Do you have it almost done here? Do you have advice for someone who has always worked, even while in school, and you have 4 years work experience outside of school, but you put the feedback too junior, aka too young? Yeah, remove all of your years you graduated. If you have other experience within a similar job, I would include that. If you've dealt with customer service, etc., include that. Awesome. What's the most memorable resume candidate that you have reviewed and what made him so special? I think I have more resumes that are memorable that have been of people that aren't qualified because they just don't know what to have on their resume, and like they're like pictures of themselves and stuff like that. I think the most memorable resumes that I've reviewed have just had exactly what I've needed in there. Like I can click the link to their LinkedIn profile, tells me where they live, pretty much embodies all the information that I've been telling you today. Can recruiters test resume and cover letter to see if use AI and they will punish you for it? I'm sure there's programs that are available for that, but we are going through so many applicants that unless we're using a AI program that can kind of see those things, we're not necessarily looking for those things. How to optimize your resume for ATS, applicant tracking system, is to use keywords from the job description in your resume, which is super important, which you should already be doing. So if you're applying for that job, you should have the qualifications to do that job, which should be highlighted in your resume. And how do you justify a gap of less than 6 months, or I don't know if that's less or more, while you've been job hunting? Stay-at-home dad looking for a job. You should highlight why you left your last job, laid off, medical leave, whatever, so that, we're aware of those things as we are hiring you. Okay, well, that's all the questions that I have here. I really, really appreciate you all being here today, and hopefully you found this information helpful. Please don't forget that I do offer one-on-one coaching through the Leland platform.